course, would like to talk to the test pilot. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. He was called to before a grand jury that's been looking into this, and I don't know this for fact, but we do know there are reports that he may have taken the Fifth Amendment. So let's see what answers, if any, come out of the next week and a half.
You know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Phil, but you know, I know you know your stuff so well with the planes. Let's say they approve the plane at some point. They say, okay, it's safe to fly. Right. These planes haven't been in the air for a long. I would imagine there's you got all the software upgrades or whatever they've got to do. B, there's just physical maintenance you're going to have to do on the plane. I mean, you can't park a car for a year and then just, you know, start it up and drive to the grocery store.
They actually go through maintenance every day. And that's part of what you see the airlines as well as Boeing doing. But to your point, Brian, you just can't flip a switch and get these back in the air. It's going to take anywhere between 30 and 45 days, depending on where the plane is. You know, they do have teams that Boeing says will go out and can put the software on the plane. That's probably the easiest part of getting these planes ready to fly again. But you're right. You have to do a lot of daily maintenance on these planes.
Phil LeBeau live in Chicago on what was the story on Friday, certainly to be the story today as well. Really maybe the story of the year. Phil, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Well, Boeing dragging the Dow down on Friday, having its worst day in nearly 3 years. But does that mean that you need to avoid most of the market because Boeing is bringing the Dow down? Well, your next guest says no. And in fact, he's got some companies that he owns that he likes a lot. Joining us now is David Katz, Chief Investment Officer at Matrix Asset Advisors. You, David, good morning, by the way, do not own Boeing. Is it because of the 737 MAX or just something else?
We haven't owned it because it's been very richly priced. It's a great business, but it's had a high PE, so that's hurt us for the last few years. That's helped us this year. At this point, we think if you have a 12 to 18-month time horizon, there's a pretty good likelihood Boeing is going to be higher. But for the short term, clearly there's going to be negative news, more negative news. The stock's going to be volatile, and you could have more action like Friday's.
Because when you look at a name like this, some people might suggest this is the perfect opportunity. It's a well-run company, a 100-year-old company that has some problems. They've got problems. I mean, they switched out. They removed their chairman. They made him CEO. They brought in a new chairman. There's management issues, all these investigations. Stock's been under pressure. But I think if you look 10, 15 years out, I mean, why not poke around this name? Because these kinds of problems, one would assume, will not last forever.
They won't last forever. Most investors don't have that 10-year time horizon. If you have a 12 or 18-month time horizon, that's considered pretty long these days. If you had that time horizon, we think...
Sign of the times, Dave.
Right. We think the stock will be higher, but short term, you're going to have a lot of negative news. So if you don't want to be around that negative news and that volatility, we think you'd wait. If you own the stock, we would still probably stick with it.
So you're not poking around Boeing just yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, I want to move on to another topic as well. This is a major week for the pharmaceutical industry as well, because we have a landmark trial involving the opioid crisis. In fact, that trial gets underway today. Efforts to strike a settlement broke down over the weekend after state and local governments rejected a roughly $4 billion offer that would have prevented the trial from beginning. As a result, opening arguments are set to begin later on this morning. Key names to watch include AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and others. Do you own any of those names or any names that have been caught up, sort of, David, in the headlines lately?
You don't own any of those names that are the biggest players in it. We do own Johnson & Johnson. They were off Friday on some talcum powder scares. At this point, unlike a Boeing, we think the stock sold off enough that we would be adding to it right here.
Okay, J&J's, I mean, is like a boxer getting hit with a jab and with an uppercut, because on one hand, you've got the opioid stuff, and on the other hand, you got the talcum powder stuff. Why are you willing to look through that?
Well, we've quantified that their liabilities probably could be as much as 8 to 14, 15 billion dollars. But Johnson & Johnson is a huge company, massive cash flow. It's selling at a reasonable valuation, great yield, which is safe. So they are going to be muddled through these things. We think in certain cases they're closer to getting out of the litigation than into the litigation. But there's no question. There was an article that said they have 100,000 complaints against them. So that's one where we think the timing is good, but you've got to hold your nose.
I mean, there's literally lawyers out there actively petitioning for clients, basically,
absolutely.
Where you use talcum powder, give us a call at 1-800, whatever it is, so that doesn't worry you. I mean, you're willing to look past it for now.
It worries us, but we've quantified what we think the ultimate cost is going to be. And if you look at that ultimate cost, the stock and the company is much more powerful than that.
Okay, one more. Over the weekend, Barron's, I'm sure you're familiar with the publication, is saying that it is bullish on Comcast, by the way, our parent company. When it comes to the next phase of the streaming wars, Barron says the company stacks up well against competitors as its broadband service is the top means of delivering things like Netflix and Amazon Prime To all of you out there, Barron says that should cord-cutting customers accelerate, Comcast, along with new streaming players, will win over customers quickly as well. Do you own Comcast?
We do own Comcast. We like it.
By the way, thank you for that.
Absolutely. We agree with Barron's. We think they're a wonderful business, and it's selling at 14, 15 times earnings, and they're going to be a survivor in this. So,
and you also think CBS is a good play here?
Different than Comcast. Comcast clearly is a winner. They're doing great. CBS has made some changes, and the stock is just dirt cheap. Well, Comcast has done well. CBS has done so horribly that it's at 6 times earnings. We think if you have an 18-month time horizon, stock could be 50 to 75% higher just because it's so cheap. They are going to be a player eventually. We think the CBS Viacom combination is a good thing. So we like that here as well.
Wow. So Comcast and CBS as well. Now, if there was an ugliest dog contest for the stock market, it would have to be energy. And that's the sector that I follow. And obviously, I mean, these names have been just left on the scrap heap as well. But that has not, I guess, alienated you from Schlumberger.
Well,
SLB.
Maybe from some clients because the stocks have really been miserable. But we think from here, the stocks are going to be a lot better. Schlumberger actually had a better than expected quarter Friday. The stock traded up. We think that the stock easily has 50 to 100% upside. They are the strongest player in the industry. Ultimately, we do need drilling. The supply demand is getting back into balance. So we think this is a very compelling risk reward. We like the new CEO. We think the company is very focused on shareholder value and cash flow.
By the way, their biggest competitor, Halliburton, is publishing their numbers in about 1 hour, about 6:45 a.m. Eastern time. Those numbers are going to be coming out. But when you look at Schlumberger, how much do you think the oil and gas sector's pain has been caused by, and I hate to use this term, artificial selling, but companies that have sort of these ESG, environmental, social governance models, they won't own fossil fuel companies. They've been selling, maybe not because they hate the stock, but because they are now no longer able to own fossil fuel companies. How much of that do you think has provided this sort of short-term or medium-term external pressure on the names?
We think it's put an additional weight on the names, but we think the psychology is so horrible right now, and oil prices, while they're higher than at the beginning of the year, have given back a lot lately, and just the psychology is so negative across the board. The stocks have just been miserable.
Well, it's good to hear that somebody does love the ugly dog as well.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got a David Katz, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Have a great week, David. All right, meantime, companies have been tightening the purse strings on IT spending this year amid the overall slowdown in the global economy. However, despite concerns about any recessions and cutbacks in discretionary spending, corporate IT budgets are expected to rebound next year. Joining us now with an exclusive look at their new global IT outlook is John Lovelock. He is Research Vice President and Chief Forecaster at Gartner, which is holding its annual IT Symposium and Expo in Orlando, Florida, which sounds pretty good right now this week. John, thanks very much for joining us here on Worldwide Exchange. What is, first off, before we get a little micro, what's the macro headline or two from your report?
Well, Brian, thank you so much for having me on today. And great day from Florida, great conference coming up. The overall IT spending, 0.4% growth in U.S. dollar terms. It looking flat. It's looking like things are coming down. But partially that is the U.S. dollar causing us problem. 2.3% growth in constant currency. So there is some growth around the world, but the U.S. dollar's rise is kind of masking that. Next year, we get a bit more of a bounce back, and we're into the 3.6% range going forward. So there's still some uncertainty that's causing people to keep their hands in their pockets. But mostly it's about where the changes in IT spending are happening that is really interesting in the forecast.
And enterprise software remaining fairly hot?
Enterprise software is remaining hot, and it's sort of at the center of one of the big dilemmas that CIOs are facing. You know, they're being asked to continue to be a traditional business and help shift the company to being a digital business, to find their new, what Gartner's calling, tequilibrium point. So software is at 10.7%. But cloud software is at 18.3%. IT services, 5.8% growth. Cloud IT services growth, 26.3% growth. So you can see we have the balance of the traditional business still needing to be done, but the shift to the digital business driving everything, and companies getting on that new, where's my tequilibrium point? How digital do I need to be the best at my job?
I want to put that pie chart back up because, John, it is 5:40 on the East Coast in the morning. Got pie charts, for goodness sake. It's like people are like rubbing their eyes. So 10.9% jump in enterprise software. Enterprise software, John, is one of those terms that we hear. It's sort of a macro thing. It's like a major universe. What inside of enterprise software looks the best? What kinds of companies specifically are we talking about?
Well, enterprise software is really the core transactional software stuff. Your ERP, your CRM, your supply chain, everything to do with running the business regardless of what it is. That's at the heart of the enterprise software space. And within there, everything that is about getting your business out of your four walls and moving more towards digital is what's getting hot. So even things like general ledger, human capital management, supply chain management, and of course, everything to do with the customer is blisteringly hot in this area.
What looks blisteringly cold? What's just absolutely been just frigid?
Well, everything that is frigid is stuff that is still around the licensed software market. Even though there is still some growth in there, the fact that we're not seeing a lot of new license being renewed, not a lot of net new sales in the license area, means that people are holding on to what they have, but they're not investing in it new. So from a recurring spending point of view, companies that are still spending licensed software, still doing reasonably well, but not getting that kick to new spending. More interestingly, we're also seeing these guys getting out of the building with the licensed software, going to co-locations, going to outsourcing, getting it into the cloud, doing what they call lift and shift to get it out of their data center and run by cloud vendors.
John Lovelock of Gardner. Hey, John, we really appreciate it. Good stuff there. Watching the enterprise software companies. Appreciate your time. Have a successful conference. We'll see you again soon here on CNBC. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Coming up, if you've got a big backyard and maybe an even bigger imagination, our next story is for you. The new way to make money, not by renting out your home, but by putting another home on your property. And then later, Netflix and HBO shows. Well, guess what? They're getting pirated by an app that is backed by big-time advertisers. We'll have that story. And watch me make a complete fool of myself over college football over the weekend. We'll show it to you coming up.
When you look at the world, what do you see? We see patterns, relationships. When you use location technology, you can see where things happen before they happen. With Esri location technology, you can see what others can't.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Pain thinks it makes the rules, but the rules just changed. New Icy Hot Lidocaine Dry Spray. Instant dry technology. No mess, no residue, fast-acting relief. Rise from pain. New Icy Hot Lidocaine Dry Spray.
Whether your beauty routine is 3 steps or 57, make Nature's Bounty Hair, Skin, and Nails Step 1. It's the #1 brand uniquely formulated for silky hair, glowing skin, and healthy nails. Nature's Bounty, because you're better off healthy.
Can you customize the S&P 500 to meet your client's income objective? Only Sector Spider ETFs can divide the benchmark into 11 investable pieces. This allows you to underweight sectors like technology and overweight sectors like REITs, staples, and utilities. Sector Spiders, write your next chapter in investing. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Go to sectorspiders.com for prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully.
Your skin has different needs at night. That's why there's Gold Bond Overnight Lotion. Works while you sleep, penetrating 10 layers deep as hyaluronic acid locks in moisture. Wake up to rejuvenated looking skin. Gold Bond Overnight Lotion.
All right, welcome back to Worldwide Exchange and good Monday morning. And this, I think, is a really interesting real estate story because we're seeing a big boom in a little type of housing. No, not little homes, extra homes on your property. Diana Olick joining us now with more on the latest trend. This is not Airbnb. I guess it's Airbnb for sheds.
It could be if you want. Look,
grandma in the shed.
No, they're not just the she sheds or the he sheds or the granny pods. The backyard bungalows are becoming big business for homeowners and builders. As states and cities relax zoning laws, more homeowners with extra space are building these auxiliary dwelling units. That's the official name, ADUs, for family members or as income properties. That means huge growth for Prefab ADU, which is a builder in the Bay Area. They built and installed about 100 ADUs this year. They expect to expand that to at least 1,500 next year and possibly 3,000. As for pricing, the most common product at Prefab is a 288 square foot home, which goes for about $105,000 installed.
Inquiries are split probably 50-50 from people who are looking to address housing for family members, whether it's adult children who are struggling to survive, or it's a senior family member who's weighing this against the cost of doing assisted living. And then we have other people who are looking for the rental income.
Rental income was the goal for Lisa and Chris Puhala. They built this ADU in the backyard of their Washington, D.C. home and are now renting it on a monthly basis. Eventually, they may live in the ADU themselves and rent out their larger home for even more.
We lived in it for 10 months while we renovated our main house, and we loved it. Like, I was kind of sad to move back in our main house. That's how much we loved it.
So you feel like you could retire?
Definitely.
Now, to give you an idea of growth, as zoning rules changed in Portland, Oregon, the number of ADU permits jumped from 86 in 2010 to 660 in 2018. Now, in California, when a 2017 state law forced cities to relax regulations, ADU permits jumped 30-fold. Brian?
Oh, I got two things here. Number one, did you just make up granny pods? Is that really a thing?
That's a total thing.
Are you sure that's a thing? Sounds like a Diana Olick thing.
No, actually, I think it's a Jane Wells did a story about that out west.
Okay, when I start my punk rock band, it's going to be called Granny Pods. Thank you. You just gave me my band name. I got to imagine that neighbors are not going to like this. I mean, it's some neighborhoods you can't even change your mailbox without the homeowners association getting all worked up because you got the jerk down the street who gets mad about everything. Now you got someone else living in a granny pod in your backyard?
Well, look, that has been some of the pushback in a lot of these areas, but the zoning rules have changed because think about how lucrative property is becoming, how expensive homes are, how hard it is to find a home. Then you see that your property is becoming more and more valuable because you can use it as an income property. It actually is starting to make sense in more communities, and I talked to this couple about it, and they said they hadn't seen any pushback in their community. It's a very nice D.C. area. They said, in fact, people were interested to see it and perhaps copy.
All right. Well, I could see we need to do like a month-long piece, like Dan Olick living in one of these things. Like, how are you? You come out, you're cute. Like all feral.
It's very cute.
You're
Did
like
you
wild-eyed Olick, like food. I was eating raccoon for dinner.
I like it.
Thank you very much, Granny Pods. All right, let's find out what else besides Granny Pods you're going to be talking about today. Time for this morning's top trending stories. I think Rahel Solomon, Diana just made that up.
No, I think it's a thing, but I think it'd be more interesting to see you in a Granny Pod because you're like 6'8".
I'm not 6'8". I'm just, I'm not 6'8". You're tight. No.
You're up there. Okay,
Thanks.
no Granny Pods, but bootleg movies. So a CNBC report found that a number of websites depicting bootleg content profit from advertisements. So one of those sites, TTV, offers pirated movies from major networks like HBO and Netflix. And the ads that fund that site come from names like Pandora, Hulu, TikTok, and Walgreens. And many of those companies pulled the ads after being contacted by CNBC. And some say they had no clue that the ads were there in the first place. Yeah. Have you ever heard of The Blob?
The movie?
Actually, no. It's not really an animal, but it's also not a plant. Stay with me here. Or fungus. It has 720 sexes, but not a brain. It's more than 1 billion years old. It's apparently slime mold, and the Paris Zoological Park has put it on display for the whole world to see. Zoogoers will be able to watch the blob move, as opposed to the movie, and expand across surfaces at a rate of about 2 inches an hour. Quick little thing. Not really. Australian airline Qantas completed the world's first nonstop flight from New York to Sydney in under 20 hours. So scientists monitored everyone on board to study how sleep and health could be impacted by a flight that long. Everything from cabin lighting to the brain waves of the pilots were closely monitored. Passengers and crew members will now have to keep sleep journals for the next 2 weeks to see just how bad the jet lag is. And coming off The flight that I was on from Newark to Singapore, that was about 15 hours.
The direct?
From Newark to Singapore, yeah, exactly.
It's longer than that.
You know what? No, because I had a flight in Germany.
You had to connect. I did the Newark to Singapore nonstop.
And what was that like?
19 and a half hours.
And what was that like?
Long.
How was the jet lag?
It was fine because I'm always jet lagged anyway.
Well, on this shift, yes.
So nobody is happier about that story that you just read than our friend and colleague Mandy Drury. Because now Mandy she doesn't have to stop over.
She can come
when she
visit
comes
us
visit
all
from
the
Sydney.
time.
It's a direct, assuming they do it. It's not in commercial service yet,
Not
right?
yet. So they're hoping, if all goes well, maybe 2022, maybe 2023. But then we'll see her all the
By
time.
the way, bonus, you know what, random but interesting, RBI, you know what Qantas stands for? Why it has no
tell me.
U after the Q?
No.
Queensland and Northern Territories Air Service.
Doesn't surprise me that you know
It's
that.
an acronym.
You are full of interesting
No, stick around
factoids.
because you want to make fun of me? Because I was an idiot over the weekend.
Why? Did you bet on the
Well,
Eagles?
hold on. First off, your Eagles lost.
I know.
By the way, the Dallas Cowboys snapping their sit tight 3-game losing streak, dominating the Philadelphia. They didn't really dominate.
Wow.
NFC, that's a little strong. In an NFC East matchup last night, first quarter, 20-yard drive, Tavon Austin plus a short push by Zeke Elliott. Cowboys busted out to a 14-0 lead. They expanded 27-7 by the half. They sealed the deal, winning 37-10. All right, another impressive win this weekend. My Virginia Tech Hokies scored a win. Okay, it was a six overtime game against UNC in Blacksburg, and I lost my mind.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I posted it. I was a little bit out of my mind. My kids were looking at me like crying, Dad, you're scaring us. 6 overtime game. The Hokies pulled it out in 6 overtimes against UNC. All right, a little fun there. On deck, Facebook making changes to try to keep its Libra cryptocurrency alive. And then later today, don't miss Secretary of State Michael Pompeo will be live on CNBC at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We're back right after this.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Imagine giving your kid a healthy smile. Imagine helping their teeth become 4 times stronger while preventing cavities up to 40%. Act Kids Fluoride Rinse. Flavors so delicious, your kids will love to swish.
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
London. Switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Hearing is an underrated miracle. Intimate whispers, the lushness of symphonies, the soothing patter of rain on leaves. If you had that taken away from you, it would be a massive loss for most of us. Almost all of us go every day without really stopping to think about just how important it is to us.
Audible presents The Body, a guide for occupants, written and read by Bill Bryson, including original bonus material exclusively available at Audible. Listen free as part of your 30-day trial, $7.99 a month after 30 days, renews automatically.
Fueling headwinds for Netflix. What moves could deliver confidence and a competitive edge for investors? Squawk Alley today.
The future of money is female. Women today control $6 trillion of investable assets. We don't need to be given power. We have power. We just need to use it. There is a gender investing gap. We women invest less than the guys do. Ellevest is a tech-enabled financial platform for women. We're in a capitalist society, and women are not going to be equal until we're financially equal. By having women invest more, it's good for our economy. It's good for all of us. This is the future of business. I watch CNBC.
All right, welcome back. It is time now for your executive recap. All the headlines you need in about 60 seconds. Let's do it. SoftBank reportedly looking to become the majority owner of WeWork without taking its massive lease obligations on. That's according to Reuters, which says the move would be part of the bank's $5 billion bailout package. WeWork is also reportedly weighing a proposal by JP Morgan for a debt package of similar size. Facebook taking new steps to combat growing concerns about its digital currency, Libra. According to Reuters, the executive leading the company's crypto initiative told a banking seminar that the initiative could cause cryptocurrency use based on national currencies like the dollar to change instead of the synthetic one that it initially proposed. And a Goldman Sachs investment banker has been charged in an insider trading scheme. According to reports, Brian Cohen, who's a vice president at the bank, is accused of tipping off an unnamed trader to insider information about impending corporate deals. A Goldman spokeswoman says the firm is cooperating with authorities on the matter. What is a major week for the markets and your money? You've got nearly a quarter of the S&P 500 opening up their books and showing off their earnings this week. Joining us now, Chad Morganlander, Senior Portfolio Manager at Washington Crossing Advisors. I mean, we've got that big wall, Chad. Look at all those logos on there. Absolutely. There's hundreds of companies. Is there any that you are watching more closely? Are there any that perhaps are a tell for the macro market to you?
So we would be watching the industrials. We're overweight the industrials by close to 1.5 times the S&P 500. We think that overall, well, based off of valuation, all you need is a monicum of global growth to reaccelerate to justify owning them now. Top line and bottom line expectations are quite low for not only 2019 but going into 2020.
Because I mean, if the world is slowing down, if the U.S. is slowing down, then companies simply they slow down their capital spending and they buy fewer things.
Right, and you've had that synchronized global deceleration. We continue to believe that that will happen in 2020. That is our base case, but it's based off of valuation. With that said, also consumer staple and healthcare. We think that there are seams of opportunity there for the overall market if your outlook is not only 18 months out, but 24 months out.
Is that the best looking group for you guys at Washington Crossing, the industrials?
The industrials are based off of valuation. Also, even if you get just a modest trade deal, the industrials can pop quite quickly.
What else looks good to you guys?
Healthcare is beaten down, obviously, based off of political concerns. We've seen this before. We think that valuations are quite low. We would be underweighting financials. We do believe that the curve right now will continue to will be flat. Therefore, investors should look more towards the industrials, get more of that cyclical torque.
Well, a lot of industrials coming out this week. Chad Morganlander, I like you. Just boom, boom, right to the point.
Thank you, Brian.
Have a great week.
You as well.
Thank you. All right, well, I could toss it to Squawk Box now 30 seconds earlier. I could just sit here and babble and just eat those 30 seconds. What should I do? We have time for the RBI? Great. Here we go. I teased it, so let's do it. By the way, the most random but interesting thing you're going to hear today has to do with one of the hottest markets in the world, and that is Greece. That's right. Greece has been kokino kato. Hopefully that means red hot and not something else. Anyway, the Greece market up 40% this year. The GREK, the Greek ETF, up 41% as well, clawing its way back from where it was last year. All right, that's it for Worldwide Exchange this morning. I'll see you tomorrow. The aforementioned Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning. Shares of Boeing under pressure again. This morning I saw it closed at 344, 338. So, and then down more than 9% since Thursday on continuing negative headlines on the 737 MAX investigation. Big piece in the Journal today. Facebook's considering alternate approaches for its Libra digital currency, a project that Jamie Dimon says is a neat idea that'll never happen. And protesters in Hong Kong threw gasoline bombs and set up roadblocks. We'll tell you how the chaos, the continuing chaos, is disrupting global business on this Monday, October 21st already, 2019. Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from New York, where business never sleeps, this is Squawk Box.
Today it is.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Let's take a look at the U.S. equity futures at this hour. You'll see that right now, markets are indicated higher. S&P futures up by almost 10 points. The NASDAQ up by close to 25, and then the Dow futures up by about 63. On Friday, you saw a big decline for the Dow, and that was almost entirely because of what happened with Boeing shares. Those losses that we saw on Friday made the Dow lose its gains for the month of October. We're going to talk an awful lot about Boeing and what happened on Friday and what you can anticipate happening this week as well. Overnight, though, in Asia, let's take a look, and you're going to see that the Nikkei actually was up by about a 0.25 percentage point. The Hang Seng and the Shanghai composites both closed relatively flat. And then if you look at what's happening in Europe today, you will see that at least at this hour, with some of that active trading, there are green arrows across the board. People are watching the FTSE particularly closely because of the Brexit vote that did not pass in Parliament on Saturday. Questions as to what this will mean. Will there be an extension sought? Or are we going to look at another general election? Is there going to be another referendum that eventually takes place? But right now, the FTSE's hanging in there. It's up by about 0.2%. You see a similar gain for the CAC, and then the DAX is up by almost 0.75 percentage point. Back here in the United States, if you're watching the Treasury market, you'll see that the yield for the 10-year right now is sitting at 1.771%.
Shares of Boeing, as Becky just mentioned, under pressure again this morning. That stock, as you know, fell at nearly 7% on Friday. That's its worst drop since February of 2016, after it was revealed that officials in Washington are intensifying their probe into the company's troubled 737 MAX jet. Boeing said yesterday it's still investigating leaked messages from a former test pilot from 2016 about erratic software behavior on the 737 MAX jet. And later in the show, we're going to talk to Ralph Nader about the 737 MAX investigation. But I will say one of the nuances, and look, you don't know who to believe in this, but if you really read through what Boeing is trying to say about the messages that we saw on Friday and what this test pilot was saying, if they're to be believed, is they're saying that these messages, they're saying that they lied about this and that the plane was working erratically, were really about a simulator that they were claiming was malfunctioning, not the plane itself. Now, I'm not sure what the actual answer is.
They turned these messages over to the criminal investigation months ago.
Right.
The FAA wants to know why they were slow in bringing these to the FAA's attention.
Well, the piece today in the Journal is that a lot of the engineers at Boeing are like contracted out to help the FAA, so they have this dual role, and they felt we're feeling pressure. Now, you see the stock today. That's today. Right. That's 649. So my point, just separate from Boeing, is that the Dow's up 65, and
even
it's
with
got
this pressure that's coming
50
from
points. And so it would be triple digits if it wasn't in gains. I don't know why. There's
I got to look through the other components.
News out of China.
Right.
Well, first we have to decide what the other components are.
That squirmy, constantly changing down component list.
Apparently, Goldman Sachs is.
Yes, and Nike.
Walgreens
Boots.
So,
Let me just. I'm going to look this morning and see how these other ones are doing.
What the Dow actually consists of, and then we can look at which ones are up and down. New this morning, though. I don't know whether there's positive news or negative news coming out of China. So something about tariffs, but out of China, let's get to Eunice Yoon in Beijing for the latest. I saw something quickly, Eunice, retaliatory tariffs, but a pretty small number on the big famous things, but still it looked like. It didn't look like, gosh, we're all in this great new deal and we love each other. That's not what it looked like this morning. What's the latest?
Well, actually, the vice premier did send some positive signals over the weekend. He made a rare public speech about the trade talks, and it seemed like he was trying to say that there has been some progress made. So at a tech event that was totally unrelated, he said, China and the U.S. have made substantial progress in many aspects and laid an important foundation for a phase one agreement. China is willing to work in concert with the U.S. to address each other's core concerns. Now, I know that those comments sound like the standard boilerplate lines that you hear of the government, because that's actually what I thought when I first woke up and saw them. But what was interesting was how the state media has been portraying them. So the Global Times, which is a Communist Party paper, has described his remarks as the most clear and authoritative on progress by Beijing. And then separate to that, state media blog Taoran, which is closely watched by trade experts because they believe that it's somebody on the Chinese negotiating team who's blogging anonymously. That blogger said that Liu's comments indicate that the negotiators are, quote, approaching a phase one agreement. So the official press, by and large, has been trying to manage the expectations of the trade talks, but now it looks as though they're turning a little bit more optimistic about the outcome for the phase one agreement. So that optimism helped to inject some positivity in the stock markets today, which largely shrugged off, something that turned out to be a big surprise in the stock markets, and that is that the central bank had decided to leave the new benchmark lending rate, the LPR, unchanged in October. Most people were expecting the policymakers to want to continue to loosen because of the conditions of the economy. However, it's unchanged, so some analysts were saying this might mean that the policymakers are feeling a little bit nervous about loosening policy too quickly and by too much. But for the most part, there seems to be agreement that there's only so much that the policymakers can do to stop this trend of easing policy. And in fact, a Reuters poll said that they expect the one-year LPR to drop to 4% by the end of this year. So that's a 20 basis point lower.
All right, Eunice, just stay where you are. Keep your ears open. Let us know. I mean, it could be anything, anytime. So this is a continuing story. It gives us something to talk about every day, at least. Although I don't know, I'd maybe rather not talk about it every day. Anyway, thank you. Wish we were all getting along.
Did you want to talk about the NBA? Okay.
Yeah. No, I just wish we were trading and selling our stuff there freely and and bringing.
Why can't we all just get along?
Why can't we all just get along and just realize, right?
Yeah.
We're one it's humanity.
No, I'm not so sure.
No, I'm not so sure either.
No, I would love that too. I would love that too. But especially what we're seeing with, say, the NBA isn't a very good indicator because I'm not sure Adam Silver should be coming to China anytime soon. Anyway, just because I don't know if you guys saw, but the state media has been. Or maybe worse than that, the state media, CCTV, the broadcaster, actually said that he could face retribution for his comment late last week when he suggested that Beijing had demanded that Mori be fired for his Hong Kong tweet. So the Chinese government, just in state media is saying that he crossed the bottom line for the lack of respect that he showed the Chinese. Also, they said that his comments by suggesting that it was Beijing who made that demand was a dirty lie. So there's a lot of this animosity that's growing towards him specifically, not only with the NBA, but we've been also watching the broadcasting schedule for Tencent, which is the private company that broadcasts the NBA games, and it's still all going. Everybody's going to be able to watch the games, except for the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets still is still on the blacklist.
That's interesting, though. I mean, you suggest that he might actually want to reconsider traveling to China at this point. Maybe just lay low and stay away.
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I just because there is, the state. You have the state TV. CCTV broadcasting that he himself could face retribution. They said sooner or later. So in that kind of environment, I'm not sure about his schedule plans for China, right. But in that kind of environment, it might not be the best time to be coming.
I'm not coming over there. I mentioned Winnie the Pooh one time, and I'm not.
You should come.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
You should come. We could go to Shanghai Disneyland. We could go buy lots of different characters together.
Let's meet halfway. Let me think. Where could we do it? Is Paris halfway or probably
Hawaii?
Not?
Paris is not halfway. You got to farther over.
What's up? There is no wrong way. You remember a guy named Columbus? I mean,
meet her in Moscow.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
meet her in Moscow.
Huh?
Meet her in Moscow. That's.
I'm trying to think. Am I allowed to go there? I'm not sure.
Maybe
probably. I know Trump, friends with him, so maybe I, probably be welcomed into Moscow, right? Probably get to, according to you, right?
Hey, Eunice, thank you.
I know you were.
All right, it was another weekend of violence in Hong Kong. Protesters hurled petrol bombs at police who responded with volleys of tear gas and rubber bullets. NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us right now. She's got more on what happened over the weekend and what we can expect next. Janice.
Well, Becky, we've seen escalating violence over the past 20 weeks, and this past weekend, a new flashpoint. This mosque was sprayed by a police water cannon. It was covered in that blue dye, and Hong Kong officials were very swift to react. They wanted to minimize the damage, apologize to the chief imam, say they have no issue with the Muslim community. The concern, of course, is that after nearly 5 months of unrest here, religious friction is just an added danger. Protesters, however, say that it's just the latest example of how police are using harsh tactics. We saw them in play over the weekend, but we also saw escalating tactics on the part of protesters, using firebombs, setting barricades, and increasingly targeting businesses and banks that they see as having links to mainland China. Most of the branches of Bank of China, Communications Bank, and other financial outlets are pretty much boarded up now with padlocks, covered in metal, covered in plywood to avoid being vandalized. We also saw some shops and restaurants that were targeted by protesters as well. And there is a sense of concern for Apple still, following that decision by Apple to pull an app from its app store that was a map of Hong Kong showing the protest hotspots. Now, Apple maintains that they believed that it was being used to target police, but protesters say it's a tool that actually helps keep them safe and helps them get around. There's actually a push within the U.S. Congress to have the app reinstated, but at this point, Apple doesn't seem to be budging, and protesters here are criticizing Apple for kowtowing to Beijing and falling to their censorship. So there is this sense that remains a very sensitive point for protesters with Apple here, now 20 weeks in, and doesn't appear to be any end in sight. Becky?
Janice, you mentioned Apple. Apple shares this morning are indicated higher, but it is a good example of the tight wire that they are walking with everything that's happening there. Janice, we appreciate the update and hope to see you again soon.
When we return, a lot more on Squawk this morning. We're going to get you ready for the trading day ahead, including a packed earnings calendar. We're going to be hearing from 40% of the Dow companies and nearly a quarter of the S&P 500. Here's a look at the futures right now as we speak. The Dow looks like it would open up about 60 points higher. NASDAQ up about 25 points. S&P 500 up about 9 points. As we head to that break, here's a look at the biggest pre-market winners and losers in the Dow.
This CNBC program is sponsored by Baird, a strong financial partner for 100 years.
Interactive Brokers pays 1.4% on idle cash in your brokerage account. Do you know what your broker pays? Most U.S. brokers offer nominal interest in their brokerage accounts. Move your account to Interactive Brokers and start earning interest.
Chatter out there about the sleepers, surprises, and the favorites.
Well, there's a time for talk, and there's that time we call show me time.
That time is now.
The biggest companies in the world are set to report.
And nobody breaks down the numbers like we do.
Who's up?
Who's down?
Who outperformed predictions?
And met expectations.
We don't just deliver the what.
We explain the why.
It's about performance.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting.
Parents, the
It's up to half price on all toys at Sainsbury's right now, so you can keep us occupied this half term and even stock up for Christmas. The Sainsbury's up to half price toy sale ends 22nd of October.
Subject to availability at selected Sainsbury's stores, excluding Centrals and Locals, not available online. Valid 16th to 22nd of October.
It's time to do a bit of Debenhams with up to 30% off our favourite coats, knitwear and boots for the whole family, and 20% off throughout home. Shop now, in-store and at Debenhams.com.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Earnings season picks up this week. We get reports from McDonald's. We're going to hear from Boeing, Caterpillar, Ford, Microsoft is on the docket. Then we hear from Amazon and so much more. You can just see it right there on the screen. We can hear from Verizon, Barclays, Intel, 3M, Visa, and so many others. Here to get us ready for the trading week ahead, JJ Kinahan, Chief Market Strategist at TD Ameritrade. JJ, great to see you.
Good morning, Andrew.
Your sense of how these earnings are going to come in, I imagine they're actually going to be pretty good, but that's in part because so many on the list already told us they were going to be bad.
Yeah, exactly. So the expectations are low. We're off to a very good start. I do think, though, some of the technology stocks may be a little bit more at risk overall. I mean, the one thing that we kind of already knew as the earnings season started was that the consumer was incredibly healthy. Obviously, early innings, so to speak, in terms of the earnings that come out. But, you know, even Mr. Diamond, when he made his talk about, after the Chase earnings, talked about how healthy the consumer is. But as he said there, and I think it's a theme that's going across the industry, is what are technology stocks doing, and is the demand going to continue to be there as we continue with this uncertainty in China overall? The primary concern I've had in going into this earnings season, and I don't think it's going to change, is that infrastructure is something that's not being spent on right now from companies because, let's face it, why take that risk right now when you don't know what's going to come out of it? And so that's the type of thing that not only hurts you in the short term, but 2 years down the line can come back to bite you also. So that's the primary thing I'm going to listen for.
So, JJ, when you say tech, though, is the issue, are you thinking that the numbers aren't going to come in where you want them to be, or are you thinking that when we get on the phone call, meaning when the CEOs start talking, that you're going to start seeing projections that are ugly going forward?
It's more the latter, Andrew, to be honest with you. I think this quarter will be fine, but I think you may see some muted expectations going forward as, again, the demand, we've seen some signs that demand might be fading a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to be a complete disaster.
And again, I'm assuming you're talking microchips of the Intels of the world, AMDs of the world. You're not thinking consumer tech.
Absolutely. Intel is really the one coming up this week that kind of leaps to mind right away, maybe a little bit more on the hardware side of Microsoft also.
If you were trying to position yourself on a Monday morning, as in today, ahead of all of this, you would do what?
First of all, for those, I think one of the things that people do is they take, particularly from retail investors who watch your show, is they take flyers on stocks and they're like, this stock's coming up. I should trade it because I hear they're having earnings tomorrow. So number one, do a little research and limit the amount of stocks you're going to expose yourself to. And the second thing is in the overall market, we've had a lot of trouble getting through 3,000 on the S&P 500. We're not very far away from that right now. So I'd be a little bit concerned as we head up there, considering what's going on worldwide, considering we, still have a Brexit vote, which nobody truly, I think, knows what's going to happen there. And again, the news from China, one day positive, next day negative. I'd be very careful about getting too long here until you see that we can break through this 3,000 level convincingly.
Okay. JJ, always good to see you. Thank you for helping us on this Monday morning. You bet.
Coming up, JP Morgan launching a new policy center. We're going to talk to the head of this new effort about the strategy behind the center and the role of corporations in society. That's next.
Trading Blog is sponsored by Columbia Threadneedle Investments. Your success, our priority.
Consistency can deliver on investment goals. Columbia Threadneedle Investments.
As a principal, I can tell you this. When one student gets left behind, we all get left behind. This is a problem that affects each and every one of us. Together with IBM, we've created a whole new kind of school called PTAC. Within 6 years, students can graduate with a high school diploma, a college degree, and a pathway to a competitive job.
You know what's going up today?
Today, there are more than 100,000 PTAC students around the world. It's a game changer.
Opportunities aren't always obvious. Sometimes they just drop in. CME Group can help you navigate risks and capture opportunities. We enable you to reach global markets and drive forward with broader possibilities. CME Group, how the world advances.
Does your broker offer more than just free trades? Fidelity has 0 commissions for online U.S. equity trades and ETFs, plus 0 minimums to open a brokerage account. With value like this, there are 0 reasons to invest anywhere else. Fidelity.